So we've tried to do the experiment, and it was actually surprisingly good. If we compare the experiment with the simulation for very short fiber, just 10 millimeters, we got a nice match for, given how complex the problem was. It should be totally green, right? If it's totally green, the difference between the simulation and the experiment is 0. Right? But there is sort of a small aberration visible. But if you go to longer fiber, this aberration grows by a factor of 10, which you can see here, and it's almost randomized again. So we've been trying to explain what's happening, and it turns out that it's actually the distribution of the refractive index itself. The fibers are not exactly step indexed, but first they suffer by diffusion, so the dopant material actually diffuses into the cladding, which is the first mistake, and then they have another sort of fine modulation of the refractive index in the core. And if you take these into account, you actually arrive on a very good agreement again. And with this, we had all that we needed for starting to bend the fibers, because we, for the first time, understood properly what's happening in the fibers, and we could do the experiment and predict as well what's happening. And when we've done it, when we've bent the fiber up till the sort of threshold of the deformation, we continue to break the fiber. So this is the maximum we can bend the fiber. We could simulate and we could study experimentally what happens with the molds. So this is the experiment. You can see that as we bend them, what's happening is we don't actually lose them, we only slightly change their faces. So this is the most important thing. If they don't mix, you just need to adjust the faces of the molds, and you have the transformation matrix again. But you have to be in representation of the beams. The simulation gave us practically identical results. So with that, we could actually do the experiment. Please skip through this. And just to show the flexibility, this is what happens if I deform the fiber and try to get an image. What is the image? Sorry. So this is a USA target, and we have just thick enough fiber to study this for triplets. So yes, so if we bend the fiber, the image sort of goes. Right? But if I apply this theoretically predicted modulation, deformation, for the known deformation of the fiber, I get the image back very nicely. The important thing is that because it's almost diagonal, I don't need to worry about any other crosstalk of molds. I can only assume that it's reading the faces, it still has basically the same effect. Which is important because it doesn't matter which deformation goes first. If you've got fiber that is deformed in a quite complex way, you only need to consider the total amount of deformation, and you don't need to worry which one goes first. Fantastic. Right, also we can predict the distance behind numerically. We don't need to actually take the measurement once we have one. So that's quite cool. So the final bit I'm going to say is that we basically need quite some computational power, and the CPU are no longer sufficient for that. If you want to create such complex holographic modulations, you need to look for solutions like GPU, graphic processing units, where you can highly parallelize all these tasks. And all these graphic cards from NVIDIA are actually driven by gaming industry. So if you play computer games, or if you've got sons or daughters who like to play computer games, don't be too harsh to them because they are contributing to science, right? Because we can then take that and do some really cool stuff. So this is just demonstration. This is Martin Kloschner, my postdoc, who actually done most of this work. And he's now in Australia, in Sydney. So this is already quite old. When we are calculating real time, this is live calculation of distribution of these points. It can be done quite quickly. Obviously, this is not that entertaining. This is better. This is 50 micrometers, the smallest projection of James Bond movie ever. Right, so things like that are hard to publish. So we've made this kind of cube that you could possibly control through a multi-layer device. So in this case, we still use the trick with the acoustic deflectors. Basically, we've really quickly illuminated the SLM under different angles, and essentially each of these images is contracted by points that are not appearing simultaneously. There's only one at a time. But after continuing the research, we could actually eliminate this limitation, so we don't need any AOD anymore, and we we can combine quite a few points. So Martin always likes to do NVIDIA logo. So now in this case, this is all appearing simultaneously just by a single hologram. And we've even managed to suppress the spectrum quite a lot. Martin does NVIDIA in hope that he would get some free stuff from them, which didn't happen yet. Anyway, let's see. So there is a possibility to increase the numerical aperture of the fiber by creating some new and fancy optical fibers. And it looks like the numerical aperture can go almost as high as to 1, which gives us a resolution in the order of half a micron even better. Right, so the future ideas, right? We like to very soon concentrate on new technology of modulation. This is a DMD display. They don't manipulate the phase. They are binary and amplitude. You can basically just tilt each of these segments in 2 degrees, but they are extremely fast. They can go on the speeds of 30 kHz without any complexity of ALE. So this is something we'll be investigating quite soon. And also, which is something I didn't speak about, it might be possible that based on the research that we have done, it could be possible to design fibers that are immune to bending. So you bend them and the image stays the same. You don't even need to do manipulation. And it's very difficult to make them. And one way of possibly doing them would be to use structured fibers such as this. But it's quite speculative. So with that, I would like to thank the people that have done most of the work. So these are the people that contributed to the fiber work, particularly Martin and Tomas Cizmar, professor from Czech Republic, from Masaryk University. Vierka was working with me on the light sheet microscope, and obviously a lot of the initial work that I presented was done in Czech Republic in the team of Pavel Zemánek from the Institute of Scientific Instruments. A lot of work was done in St. Andrews under the supervision of Kishan Dolakia. And some of my collaborators from Oxford, including Lamelis. And here are some funding bodies. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Right. Good. Do we have any questions?
So, what is the size of the controlling of the gates or the opening and
all right.
The
semaphores.
Yeah, the semaphores. Yes.
So a spatial light modulator itself is in the order of half an inch in the size, and then you can sort of separate it into as many domains as you want. The larger number of segments you use, the better is your enhancement. Right? So typically, I would say we group the pixels by, I would say, 8 by 8 pixels. So we are talking about 40 to 100 micrometers per one. But it doesn't stop you to do anything small. Actually, we are no longer using the segments, which came to be different arrangements. We are using simultaneous generation of 2 plane waves, and then sort of using Fourier transform to reconstruct the whole population. But yeah, you can have pretty much as many as you want if you don't accept the limit of resolution of the spatial light modulator. Yes?
In optogenesis experiments on right brain, is it different? We use a single mode fiber optic or multi-mode? What is preference for the single mode fiber optics?
Well, for optogenetics, you basically shine a couple of neurons and basically, using the channel rhodopsin, probably you change the behavior. You start artificially firing the neurons. If you single mode fiber, you have nice output and you can basically illuminate quite a zone if you go in depth. The multi-mode fiber would allow you to specifically target individual neurons. You could shine on one of them only if you want, to select which one to address. If we don't have any other questions,
At lunch.
then
We can continue.
we can proceed with lunch. I'm quite hungry myself.